Welcome to Straight Talk for Entrepreneurs, where we reveal what it really takes to build a successful business. Whether you are starting with an idea or growing your business, this is the show for you. My guests and I will show you how to build a strong mindset, a powerful body, a profitable business. Hi, I'm Brandon C. White, and this is Build a Business Success Secrets. Hey, Steve, thanks for being on today. How are you?
I'm excellent, Brandon. Thanks for having me. I'm a little jealous. You're sitting in Half Moon Bay, and I'm sitting in like the frozen tundra of the plains of Texas right now.
Is it cold there already?
Yeah, we just got hit with this ice storm, so it's was the first one of the year, but it's kind of interesting. It was nice and 70 degrees, and then all of a sudden, I woke up this morning about 2 o'clock, and it was thundering, and it was snowing, rain, frozen rain, but it's thundering and lightning. It was really kind of cool.
That is crazy. Yeah, I guess the world's crazy. I was looking at some Instagram stuff, and I sent a friend who is a bike rider a message, and I was like, "It's snowing there? You're riding your fat bike tires?" And she's like, "Shut up." And then we woke up this morning, and we have what effectively becomes the Northern California Santa Ana winds, and we have gusts up to like 45 miles an hour here today. So
crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Hopefully we don't lose our electric. They said we wouldn't. So hopefully if our recording gets interrupted, it wasn't me just cutting you off. It was PG&E deciding that they didn't want wildfires to spread. But thanks so much for coming on. You have a really interesting story on how you got to ROI Online and your podcast and your agency and everything. But before, when we talked, Steve and I talked last week about what we're going to talk about. And Steve, you have this really cool story about what I call pivotal moments. And these are these moments that just, right, like you can look back in your life and say, I've had 5 pivotal moments, and those pivotal moments have led to X, Y, Z. And I feel like you had this pivotal moment that you were telling me on the plane. I told you not to keep talking about because I wanted to record it. So can you share that with the listeners of how that happened? And you had some backstory about where you were and really how you got to having this epiphany to write your book that really launched everything.
Yeah. So I have this agency, and for years I work with entrepreneurs. And one of the things I keep preaching to them is you need to see yourself as a multimedia publishing house. And I want to help them grow, and I want them to consider that there's potentially a book in them about their business and their unique perspective that they should write. But I would say that, but in the back of my mind, this little voice would go, "But where's your book, Steve?" And it was in me, and it was like I needed to write this book. I sit down and I talk with entrepreneurs, I don't know, 1,000, and all around a similar conversation about why they should implement the things that we do here at ROI Online. And I was just getting more convicted that I needed to put it into a book so more people could read it other than just the one-on-one conversations that I had. But I didn't want to write a book just to write a book. I wanted it to be unique and good and valuable. And so one day I'm on a plane, I'm flying to San Francisco to go to a Google Next conference. And I love to read books, all in the business genre. You think about the thought leaders that you follow, the things that you got value and helped you grow with someone that sat down and wrote a book. And that's how you learn about them. And you get some piece of knowledge and you apply it to what you do, and it helps you whether you hire them or not. So I'm sitting on this plane, and I'm wanting to implement the entrepreneurial operating system for my business. It's just a system, a framework on how to manage your business better. And it stems from the book called Traction by Gino Wickman. And it's a little little orange book, and it says, "What the heck is EOS?" And it's the book that you would pass around to your employees so that they would read it and understand why we're going to make all these changes over the coming year. And it's so smart. So I'm sitting there reading this book, and all great books have a framework, and this one has the entrepreneurial operating system. And in that moment, I looked at this and I thought, oh my gosh, I've been worried about what would be the unique perspective that I would put in my book. And it's been there all this time. And we call it a quick start, but simplistically, it's the entrepreneurial marketing and sales operating system. That's what it technically is. I just wasn't calling it that. And that's when the light bulb went off, what my book should be about, what the framework should be, and then it rolled downhill from there.
So that's a great epiphany to have, but writing a book is a really big challenge. I mean, even for someone who writes blog posts and things like that, for me, a book is 65,000 to 125,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you go about, like, now you're like, I got to write the book.
Mm-hmm.
How did you figure, you'd never written a book before?
No.
So how did you figure out how to write a 65,000 plus word book?
So I'd done some research. Here's the challenge. Let's say that this has been, I'm sure I'm not the only one that this has been bouncing around, and you've been ignoring this call to action, so to speak, of writing a book that's going to help you grow the value of your business. And so I had been doing a little research on, I'm sure there's a company out there that could help me get past all the little hurdles that I would struggle with, that I maybe on my first swing at something would, maybe make a base hit, but I wouldn't hit a home run. And yet this really needed to be a home run. And so I found a company that I hired to help me do that. And the things that they did was help me get it. You think over the years, you've had this tornado blowing in your inside your brain of all these ideas. And these are great concepts that fly by, not all at once, but 1 month, this one flew by. And I envision those as little pieces of, like, that plastic shopping bag that gets stuck in a branch in a tree and just sits there and flaps. That would be like a great idea that you need to capture and write it down. And over time, you would get this catalog. Well, they take your brain and help you dump it out and get it organized.
What's that process like, Steve? Do you record yourself, or do you write notes and then just take a picture and send it over?
Yeah. No, it was a series of conversations, at least 14 hours of download.
14 hours.
Mm-hmm. Not all in one sprint, but right. But here's the thing that was super therapeutic about it, Brandon. When have you gotten to talk to someone that actually listened and asked you all sorts of great questions about what you do and what you think and why? And I got to do that for at least 14 hours. That was huge therapy session. And then it's like, the way that I describe it is, you remember that time maybe that you laid a path in your yard, and maybe you kind of scraped the grass out of the way, and then you got some sand and you put it down, and you put up these little guardrails, then you had bricks or pavers or something, and so you had those delivered and they set them down, and then you start to take those pavers now and arrange them where the important ones, you get to kind of design the beautiful. That's what they did for me.
And that's a big task and really helpful, right? Especially when you're just trying to get all that information out of your head.
Yeah, because you have all these insecurities, especially if you haven't done it before. Like, you're wrestling with that internal voice is like, well, who are you to think you should write a book and that you've got something to say? But then when you get to download it and you see the first kind of rough path that they laid, and it's still very, there's a lot of anxiety there. But the way I saw myself before I started and the way that I saw myself in the end was very different. It's like, I think I'm going to write a book. I think I'm going to write a book. I am writing a book. I'm an author. And then I don't mind saying it, but it's a great book. And the people that read it, they really love it. And it's an important book for all entrepreneurs and business owners and marketing directors. They need to read it.
The Golden Toilet, right?
Yeah. The Golden Toilets. Stop flushing your marketing budget into your website and build a system that grows your business.
Now, because I want to ask you how you came up with the Golden Toilet, because frankly, I've seen the Golden Toilet a lot of places on the internet, and it seems like it's everywhere. So you get the download, and then did they help you? I don't want to say it's tricks, right? But there's techniques to get a bestseller. So, it's not, hey, I'm just going to write a book. I mean, the problem is I think a lot of people do believe they want to write a book and they have something to say and they say, well, I'm just going to write the book and I'm going to put it out there and build it and they will come. Mm-hmm. And that is just not true, right?
No, because you're launching, I don't know how many books go live on Amazon every year, but it's like 160,000 books a year or something. And so the same challenge exists with your book on the challenge that you have as far as your business being seen, found, or your message being heard and absorbed. You still have that in every domain, and especially in the book domain. So they helped me really being from the marketing world and having a marketing agency. I did above average as far as positioning and prepping the earth, so to speak, for the launch. So we had a list. I had read some other books by some other great guys on how to launch a book. And there's like a book and videos on everything. You definitely have to do your homework, but that's where you can have a competitive advantage against all the other people launching, is because most just write the book and then they go, okay, so how do I find people to read it now?
Yeah, it's just not build it, they will come. I mean, it's the same thing with a podcast, right? Like, or a website or a product. I mean, you have the best mousetrap in the world, but nobody knows about it. So they helped you. I guess they have some sort of system, and I'm sure that changes regularly, but with internet and SEO, but really put together a program where maybe you don't go to print first, right? Or did you print on demand, or did you do beforehand, or how did you do that?
Yeah, so I ended up launched with a Kindle / paperback version. And they coach you on how to market it. This particular company coached me on how to market it in general. The specifics of it, their core essence was to help me write a great book, not necessarily to write and launch a great book that fits into your existing business system in your business. And, that's a different game and something that I was more inclined to do, which was definitely an advantage. And which my next book will walk someone through all the things they should consider based on my past experience in this.
Yeah, so you were taking a lot of your past experiences in sales and marketing and then saying, okay, well, if I do this with it and I build, you got to build an email list, you got to build a following, you got to get your SEO right. You probably got to do some paid advertising, I imagine, right?
Yes. Yeah. So in particular, the game with Amazon to get a bestseller is that you need, I forget, I think you want to sell in the first several days. I'm going to tell you wrong, but it's been, I launched in January this past year. Kindle measures your Amazon measures your Kindle purchases. And so you can come up with a 99-cent version and really prime the pump. And I think if you can sell over 100, 200 books in just the first 3 or 4 days, then that signals to the Amazon algorithm, this book has some legs, and then they start to promote it as well.
And that sounds doable, but I would say that, 100 or 200 doesn't sound like a lot at first, but you think about how many people you have got to have, for lack of a better way, warmed up to you, who you are, your brand. Like, you literally have to have this teed up. You can't, and you can't, I'll share a story, but you can't go into this and be like, I'm going to wing it. I'll tell you that the first launch of this podcast, candidly, Steve, I was like, well, I've been podcasting since, like, I don't even know when before podcasting was podcasting. It was just putting MP3 files online. You and I talked about that, right? And I was like, I'll be fine. I'll just, I wasn't winging it. I had a plan, but I'll get there. And, you don't get there, because even with podcasts, if you're going to play that game, you've got to get listeners and things and engage. And it's super hard going from zero. But, then I learned about that, and I stole the idea. I borrowed it from gamers here in Silicon Valley, who they launch, and probably gamers all over the world, but they launch in a different country under a different name first. And then they learn everything. And then they come back and quote unquote, launch their business, right? Well, they already launched in a country and nobody in the next country knows about it. So they're able to do that. And that's what I did. But I think with a book, you don't necessarily really get these chances, because if that's the case, right, you're going to have to change the book a little bit. You're going to have to change the title. You're going to have to go through this whole process. So I guess I'm really emphasizing what you point out here, which is you absolutely need to pre-prime or prime this thing, so that when you do launch, and in the 4 days, if that's what the algorithm says, you have at least 100 sales, and otherwise you've really hurt yourself, right?
Yeah. You want to get a certain number of reviews. You want to do some quick sprint number of sales, but what it highlighted to me is all the back work that I could have optimized better. That on the next go around, you can bet I'm going to have all of my system lined up to really exploit it. But the first time you go to the game, you're learning, right? And this particular company, that wasn't their sales point, and I didn't have that expectation of them. But being a marketer myself, I had the fundamentals clear in my head. But you're right. If you're going to launch a book, you need to send an email out to a significant list, not just 30 people. But to have a significant list means you've been hustling for years.
Or you spent a ton of money in Facebook ads and overpaid for your lead, right?
Totally. Yeah. And then the expectation of what value you expect from a book sale. If you think that you're going to write a book and live off the proceeds from the sales of a book, no. The reason that I wrote the book is because I wanted someone to read the book, love the framework, and approach me already prepared to implement this in their situation. That's so valuable. That's a totally different conversation than someone going, well, convince me why I should do it this way.
Yeah, and I will just raise my hand. So my mom has written 7 books, and I am the product of not a starving artist, right? But the truth of the matter is, and my mom wrote those books a long time ago, photography, and wrote them. You got to have this plan with the book. There, certain people, right? Like Harry Potter can get rich off of book sales, but that's really I don't know, what is it, Steve? The top 1% of 1% or 1%.
Yeah, that's a big outlier for sure.
Yeah. So the fact that you actually have this, for lack of a better way to put it, value ladder and plan and expectation, that the book is really your primer, like you said, because when they come to you at that point, you as the author and expert, they already believe.
It's so true. When you think about, as an entrepreneur or a business owner, there should be some place in your business where you start to go, I need to be prepping this company. At some point, I'm going to step off the bus. Okay. And I want something to show for all of this work. Right. And so one of the things that you need to do is make a business that runs without you. But the harder thing is to set up a sales process that can run without you. And one of the reasons that you would want to write a book is that book is just a big fat lead generating PDF or Kindle or audio book or interview generator. That's all that thing is. But that book becomes a salesperson for you that's out there meeting all these people that you would never meet if you didn't sit down and make that investment.
So I have a few questions on this. Did you record an audio version of this book yet?
Yes.
Did you read it?
Yes, I did.
How hard was that?
Well, it just was like the whole process. It stretched me. It caused me to invest time and learn a new thing and to see myself different. But in the spirit of self-publishing, I think it's only congruent that you should read your own book.
Now, did you record it? Obviously, anybody who's watching on YouTube knows that you've got a professional setup and you have a podcast. So of course you do, but not all listeners, you don't have to have a professional setup to do a podcast to get started. So I don't want to say that, but Steve, you have that. Did you record this in your studio there and edit it?
So that's a great question. What you're seeing is the result of me going to someone's studio and recording it in their studio and learning that I could do this myself. But what I needed at that time was someone that could help me. You think about when you read your book, you make all these mistakes, and I needed someone to sit there and record it and help me get those files off and edited and up to the standard that you would upload it into Amazon that they would expect. So I needed help that first time.
And well, let's talk about that process, because how long did that take and how much did it cost between getting someone to help you write the book and recording it for your audio?
So I spent $25,000 as an investment in getting my book, where it would be a book that you're proud of, meaning that it would have great cover art, it would have a great title, you would have people to discuss and coach you on those things, to go through, and there's all these different editing processes. I just thought editing was editing, but there's all these different editing processes. The book is me. It is my story. It was interesting how in the first several chapters, when I started to review them, it became apparent to me that I was going to have to step up and get in and deliver on the details that would show the depth of knowledge. No one can represent that for you. Well, if that is true in that area, then the format of the book, the printing of the book, all these other little details that I wouldn't know. I needed someone that could guide me through that and help me end up with a book that I would be proud of, and not just this thing I obviously spit out real quick as a PDF.
Yeah, and the editing really does make a difference to have someone who's just a professional editor. I mean, there's no substitute for that. You will see words that you think are there and swear that you read them, but they're, for some reason, they just don't show up when it hits print. Now on the audio, that was an extra. Was that a week's worth of work and
No.
$1,000, or what was it?
You know, you would think that you could go in and read your own book in just maybe 2 days. And there are scenarios that would expect it of you. Your voice gets tired. Your energy changes. It's amazing the energy drain that comes out. Also, on part 2, I'm going to do my Audible recording first before I launch my printed version, because what I learned is the chapters I really dug in, they really flowed like I speak, right? And in the beginning, when I was reading the evolution of my book was like, am I okay changing this word in this chapter? And I was really reticent, but on into the book, I was changing whole pieces, rewriting things. Really, the depth came out, and those I noticed when I was reading flowed so easy.
So you're going to write the book on on your new book coming out. You're going to, and you probably already started, write the book and then record it, release it on Audible, and then release it in Kindle and print?
I would answer it this way. Of all those edits, the different types of editing, the last layer of editing that I would add on to that is to read it and make the tweaks, or that would fit in somewhere. But as I read it and record my Audible version that can launch at the same time, that will impact and be a great way to check to make sure it really has my voice.
Oh, I see. That's like your last editing process. And the Audible, in many ways, doesn't have to exactly match the book, because the book's going to always have additions, right? You're going to catch something or rework something and then release it, right?
Totally. Yeah, it was nice to, I really enjoyed listening to, I added a couple of interviews at the end of my Audible books, a couple of podcast interviews of the folks that wrote blurbs for my book. I always had a call to action at the end. So at the end of every chapter, I would do a little call to action. Be sure to go check out these free resources at this. So there's these fun personality action things that you can inject in an Audible version that doesn't come across necessarily in your text version.
I realized that we didn't actually get to the answer. So how long did it take you to record that?
So I think I took like a month or so, because I would go in for just 2 hours, 2-3 times a week. That studio was local. And so I had the luxury of just popping in when I had the energy and picking up where I left off. And if my energy dropped, or if I had to stop and restart a bunch, it would take, you wouldn't get as much done. I had to go back and read a couple of chapters because some of the audio setting had changed on an update that came in the middle of the project.
I see. And did they help you edit it? You had it edited for you?
Yes. So they went in and took out the ums, or there was just a nice little system that we had that made it easy to put those files together and flow and break them down into chapters. And then I received them, I listened to them, and then after I approved them, I uploaded them into the Amazon Audible platform.
And have you seen success more downloads or reads via the Audible version or the book version?
I think the Audible version is responsible for about 50% of my sales for sure.
Oh,
And
wow.
so if someone has written a book and you don't have an Audible version, it would behoove you to get it out there.
Sounds like you're in big trouble if you don't have that. And I find myself, I have these, just this weekend, I got to do a trip down to LA, and I have these books on my shelf. And now that I'm not flying, I was like, I'm just going to buy these Audible versions and listen to it. So I think maybe people, especially as they start, it feels like a lot of people right now are driving in their cars on short vacations and things like that. Or I think you can just consume
Jameson
them.
Govoni.
I think you can.
Is that your mom?
No, but I don't know why it came through on my phone there.
Well, I would think about it though, Brandon. Podcast is a medium that's really surging right now. And people are busy. They're exercising, they're working in the yard, they're doing all these driving, doing all these other things. And now to have an Audible version of your book, it would only make sense that you would have that available for someone to listen at their leisure when they're ready. And I find myself that I'll order the Audible version first. And if I really enjoyed it and I want to get the hard copy, I'll order the paperback and take notes. I have multiple versions of books.
Yeah, I got to say that I think I'm moving there. I don't know about you, when I read a book, I actually take a lot of notes. Some of that is because I have some form of dyslexia. I think back then they didn't know what to call it. So it's some sort of learning disability, but I couldn't sound out a word and read really well until later in life. But it helps me to take notes. So if it's a book that I think I'm going to get a ton of value out of, I'm starting to listen to it. And then like you buy the book, read it again, which makes it a little bit easier, I think, and then make notes in it so that you have it for reference. Now, a month is a long time, by the way, but I can understand the energy part of having to record this. And, do you know how many is it? I imagine your book's 60,000 plus words or something like that.
I think the Audible version was like 8 hours or something.
Oh, wow.
I don't want to tell you wrong, yeah. but it's like, in the meantime, I was running an agency. I was spinning up a podcast. I was setting up what we call a Quick Start Academy. So I was launching these other initiatives so that when people read the book, when they showed up, they would see these other options that they could take advantage of.
Which you really do have to have. I mean, I'm sure you can do it solo. I just think without those multiple channels, or even a way to monetize your investment here. But I will say that $25,000 at first, as I heard, I was like, well, that sort of sounds like a lot of money. But in the realm of life, $25,000 investment that is basically your sales and marketing engine for a really long time. Right now, while we're recording this podcast, that book is working for you. That's really insignificant. And I imagine the audiobook cost, a few thousand more. But I do think it's worth having professionally edited. When I first started podcasting, I used to edit myself, and it's way too time consuming. And professionals know how to get the voice to sound right. And especially with a book, you really can't. If you're going to charge someone a few bucks, whatever that is, it needs to be right. The other thing I will say, Steve, I like with Audible books is I actually play them at 1.5 speed. So I can consume more in less time. Now, I want to talk a little bit. One of the things they say about books is the title, just like a lead subject line in an email campaign or an advertising campaign, is, I don't know what percentage you might be able to help us understand that, but it's significant, isn't it, as it relates to them reading the book? So how did you come up with, the golden toilet is memorable.
So every leader faces this challenge to get what's in your head packaged in a way where people will stop what they're doing and carve off a piece of this finite resource that they show up with every day. And if 160,000, and don't trash on me if it's 200,000 or 100,000, but if that's just one metric that you're competing against, you're also competing against someone's kids demanding their attention, their business, all these other things. The title is the title can make a great book have legs. A bad title can be like a great book be missed. For example, here's a great book. It's called Conversations That Win the Complex Sale. And this is one of the best sales books that I would recommend. But what's in this book is not reflected in the design of the title and the cover. And it's a big miss. And so the golden toilet, here's what you've got going on. You've got a brain that's thinking about all these things: emails, pinging, text, Instagram, the Facebook. These are the most weaponized attention/focus grabbers and keepers, with an army of data scientists and technology and psychologists and constant. That's what you're competing against, for just someone to just give you a shot. So the title and the cover is really the essence, the most important piece. There's a great book called Save the Cat by, I think his name's Pressfield. It's the book on writing a screenplay, but he takes 2 chapters in helping you just write what's called the log line. And so you go in to sell that title and the subtitle needs to convince you to read the book and know what it's about and have an expectation. So when you think about something that's universally iconic and absurd, kind of funny, can be extremely persuasive. And so the golden toilet comes from a lot of conversations with these entrepreneurs that I talked about. Every day you wake up as a business owner and someone calls you every day and they say, hey, Brandon, I can get you at the top of the search results. Okay. And so they're calling you every day, every day, every day. Over time, your brain, your frame of your expectation is impacted by all this propaganda, by all the social media propaganda. And so it's like I had to get the business, these very smart people that overcome any challenge just by reaching across and grabbing the steering wheel and even reaching their foot over there and punching the gas. That's just how they are. They're going to get through this. Somebody might get an eye poked out, but we're going to make it regardless. Well, these are the people you're talking to. How do I get them to stop and listen when they come pre-programmed? They've already written their prescription, so to speak, on what they need from you. And believe me, I failed them many times giving them what they asked for instead of aligning them, which is why my book. But one day I just said, Brandon, look, your website's just a toilet. And you could hear the tires screeching on the pavement in their brain. What? Well, think about it. You wouldn't work in an office if it didn't have a toilet. You wouldn't build a house or buy a house if it didn't have a toilet. But when people come over, where do you guys hang out? In the kitchen, the patio, around the pool, the fireplace. It's just an important piece of an overall system. And we need to treat it that way and have an expectation that it's going to facilitate a sales process, that it's going to support the marketing process, your hiring process. It's just a piece of a comprehensive system. It's not the only piece of this thing that we just need to quickly tick off and then move on to the next thing.
So how long did it take from when you started? Because people always want to know, right? Like everything you said makes complete sense in how you got there. But how long did it happen? I mean, I'm joking, right? It didn't happen in a day. It probably happened over weeks or months.
To come to that.
Yeah,
that
like the end, like where you get to that book title.
Yeah. So it was one of the stories that I had downloaded in those interviews, and it really stuck out to the person that was working with me on this. And she kept asking me a lot of questions around it. And so the golden toilet just popped out because it's so absurdly iconic. And it is the greatest representation of wasted FU money that rock stars demonstrate, Saudi kings, drug lords, and yet who is it that doesn't want to waste their money? My audience. And when you call their website a golden toilet, that even everybody can see, and it doesn't help the user experience, and it doesn't improve the functionality. It makes sense to them immediately.
So I'm going to ask that all, was it 3 months?
Oh,
6 months?
well, so it was like 6 months, and I wavered on whether I should go with that title or not.
Got it. Okay. That's what I just wanted to get to, because people, there's this thing. I mean, you and I talked about it out there, right? There's this, hey, you're going to write a book and it's going to be easy. And I mean, look, if you're in the business of helping people write the book, you're going to want to get them over the line. But I think also the expectations happen when the customer has that experience, and then they're like, well, Brandon, you said that you had Steve on, and it sounded like he got to that in 72 hours. And you're like, no, Steve took 6 months or 3 months to get to that title. This, overnight success isn't overnight success. And we say that, but for some reason, Steve, from a guy who has a psychology degree, I find it interesting that we know that, we say that, but we still believe it was an overnight success every time we see it.
The silver bullet's been just pounded in our head, but there is no silver bullet. I went through emotion. This was a very emotional process. Imagine exposing yourself, your thoughts, your declarations, drawing some lines in the sand, just stepping out there like that to just see the first rough draft of what you had. And then I shut down for a couple of weeks. When I read it, I was embarrassed. I was like, I didn't want anybody. I definitely wasn't going to show it to anyone else. Okay. And I had to finally one day, I just had to force myself. All right, chapter 1, start getting in there. But it was emotionally embarrassing. The title, the most important piece of this whole thing, I wrestled with making the call for months. Finally, it came down to, Steve, it's a great title, but here's the question you need to ask yourself. Can you defend it? And it's like, well, yeah, I can defend it. And then that's when I was able to own it. To see people say the title, they can't help but smile.
Well, that's why it's memorable. I mean, there's just, like I said, you see it, you feel like, I feel like I see it a lot. But yeah, people are going to remember it. And that's really that's the key here is you've got to be memorable, and you've got to get that attention in someone's span of their day to remember it. So, and I think as I was listening to you, I was thinking, so for all our listeners out there who are trying to figure out, how do I sell more? How do I make more money in my business? How do I either start my business or scale it? The truth of the matter is that this is a prime example, right, Steve, where you have an agency. It's called ROI Online. You help entrepreneurs build their sales and marketing. And you have this really cool program that, quite frankly, over the last, I don't know what it's been, 50 minutes, we haven't talked about it all, but what we have talked about is your book. And people, you should buy the book. Steve's book is really good, and his system that comes with that. But you don't have to believe that. Just read the book. And this isn't a prime example for all of our entrepreneur listeners that if you do write a book and you do become an expert, that you can get on podcasts, you can get press, you can get people, and you're selling without selling and being seen as authoritative expert.
Yeah. Your core business is the thing that you do. But think what a book does. A book goes out there and convinces people about your unique perspectives. And they may try it, they may benefit from it, but at some point they're going to come back around and check on what you're doing. It may introduce a course. Now you've got a great reason to just develop a quick course that people can go. So if the book is step one, all right, well, I'll take the course because I need a little more support. Well, now you have an opportunity to offer another revenue stream. Then the next part would be, I want to attend a live class and you teach me how to do what you talk about in the book. Then the next step would be, why don't you guys just do what you do in the book? That's the way you would look at this.
Yeah. And like I said, the beauty of it is there's no selling. You just talk about your book and here it is. I mean, now getting to it, you do have an agency and you do help entrepreneurs, and you will, I feel like as I was listening to you, I was like, I think entrepreneurs, a lot of entrepreneurs, I don't know all, but someone asked me the other day, they're like, what religion are you, Brandon? And I was like, Jeet Kune Do. And they said, well, what? That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. Is that a religion? I was like, well, I'll tell you what I do. I try to look at everything and take the best from it and then put that together and add my own secret sauce. Mm-hmm. And that's worked for me. That sort of makes it better. And, everybody, not to say everybody, but older entrepreneurs will say, oh, that's what Steve Jobs was always known for, which is true. In many ways, Steve, that's what you've done here, right? You've taken courses, you've been coached, you then added your sales and marketing sauce, which you go back, which we didn't even talk about today, but you have a ton of sales and marketing experience previously and brought that together. And now that's what really has created ROI Online.
Totally. You think about, let's say you're a plumber. Well, there are thousands of plumbers out there that can come in, fix a toilet or stop a leak or do all the things. So what differentiates you? Your unique perspective and value that you add above and beyond what everyone else does, right? And I heard this quote the other day, and I forget who said it, but so this is not my quote, but people buy you first before they buy what you do. And before you can sell you have to pay your dues. You got to do your reps. And so a book comes out of, it's at the point I believe in a business where you've got good customers, good employees, good services or products, and you're starting to prepare to scale. And then you go, now's the time for me to really take my unique perspective and make sure it's super clear in all of what I do. And the book process delivers that. It distills your message. It makes it succinct. It really positions you in what you do better. And that only bakes into everything else, all the hustle you've done in the past.
Yeah, it won't be easy, but it will be great for your business.
Think of all the folks you compete against. They have to jump over this hurdle too. And they're not going to.
Yeah, not everybody's going to write a book. I mean, I have not written a book yet. I have one that I am writing, but I have not gotten it out, and it just takes a while. So, no, but the hurdle, it is hard. But I think hiring someone to at least help get you through those hard parts, and as much accountability. Like, hey, Brand, I had someone email me actually today, and they said, hey, you're supposed to pick these chapters that by today, are you going to have it COB? And I was like, well, got to get to it today. Got to get to it right now, because going to have Steve on the podcast, and I got 6 other things to do. So I think just that accountability is well worth it, because it will force you to do it. I say this with bike riding all the time. My wife's like, you procrastinate. And in the morning, I'll get up and I'll start reading, or I'll start working on something, and I'm sitting there in my bike kit, and I don't get out until 11 o'clock, where I wish I would have gotten out at 8. But then yesterday morning is an example where I didn't think the guy I ride with all the time was going to ride, and Saturday night he's like 8 o'clock Sunday morning. I had just finished a 72-mile ride or 75-mile ride, and I was tired. I was like, yeah, 8 o'clock, because guess what? He's showing up at 8 o'clock, and we're getting on our bikes at 8 o'clock. So I think having that accountability and paying for it. I also will say this, sounds like it's a sales pitch here, but it's just true, is when I don't know, and I'm interested in your perspective, Steve, but anytime I've given something away for free, and it has accountability things in there, I have not found in general, there's a few exceptions, but for the most part, and I'm not saying that the advice that I've given people don't value. I'm just saying that when I give it away for free, I don't find that people have the results when they pay me. And I don't find that with myself, because I have, I would admit, I would say several hundred free PDF downloads. Great, incredibly insightful, educational. Definitely not, some of them are sort of light, but some of them are really extensive. But the courses that I bought, the books that I bought, those are the ones that I watch, I read. It just because you're invested. So, really saying that to all the listeners out there, that, you have to pay. I mean, you pay for an education. In this case, I think it was worth it. And I think paying someone to help you with a book is well worth it. So, but if you don't believe us, try it yourself. Give it a go, right? It's free.
It's a part of this thing in us that is a commitment. When you make that investment, you're actually like getting married, or you're going to step up and pull your weight more and not let yourself off the hook as easy as you would if, well, it didn't cost me anything. So maybe next time.
And I think that's it. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing the story, and just being straightforward, Steve, and sharing the real numbers for people so they know what they're looking at. But I'm excited for people that they hear your message and understand that it is attainable, and that you can do it, and you get yourself a coach. And it is true at ROI Online now, with your next book coming out, that you're helping entrepreneurs with this, and they should check you out. Steve, what are your 3 high percentage tips for entrepreneurs who want to build their business and write a book?
Number 1, you have to see themes. The competitive advantage is to recognize themes or patterns, to implement systems and processes. They're huge. They're like the force multiplier in your business. There's a point where you can wing it, but then when you see patterns and you set up systems to exploit the patterns, or to expedite the process that happens in those patterns. For example, the patterns I saw in the themes of the conversations that I was having with entrepreneurs, it would make sense that I would set up a system to deliver that message better or to deliver the services better. So those are two hits. And then the third hit is there's no silver bullet. There's a framework. And if you can recognize and name, put an acronym on it and kind of brand it, that framework all of a sudden adds big value, creates clarity and understanding and appreciation for what you do that other people do too, but they haven't sat down and created that framework.
Those were awesome. Steve, thanks for coming on. We are looking forward to your next book. When do you think you will have that?
Yeah. So it'll happen. So put me down for 9 months.
All right. You're on the hook. We're going to have you back in 9 months talking about your second book, and you will have a title, and we will be able to actually have a call to action where they can buy it. Now, your current book, The Golden Toilet, and I hit this in the intro, I'm going to hit it in the outro, but anybody can buy that book on Amazon, Kindle and or Audible.
Absolutely. The Golden Toilet. Absolutely.
All right, Steve, thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your week, man.
Thanks, Brandon. This has been a pleasure. You're a great host.
Take care.